Today, I'm thrilled to speak with Harmony Robinson-Stagg. She is an Ayurveda and women's health practitioner. She has over 19 years of experience as a registered nurse, and she's a doctor of Chinese medicine. Harmony aims to bridge the gap between science-based Western medicine, Eastern medicine, and spirituality. Today, we talk about the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. Harmony offers an Eastern perspective on treating symptoms and embracing this new phase of life, not as a decline, but as a blossoming. I know you're going to love this conversation, so let's dive in. Welcome to the Goddess School podcast, where Eastern wisdom meets Western mysticism. I'm your host, Lisa Marie Rankin, author, teacher, and Ayurvedic wellness coach, here to help you reclaim your feminine superpowers. And I am so glad you're here. Listen, women are magical. They are intuitive, creative, wise, and magnetic. However, in today's fast-paced world, these gifts often get buried under a more masculine way of life. Together, we'll awaken those powers. In each episode, I'll take you through sacred teachings like Ayurveda, shadow work, and the mysteries of archetypes and rituals, so you can live with more clarity, synchronicity, and joy in all realms of life, like relationships, health, money, and more. So let's dive in so you can make the most of your one mythic life. The veil is parting. Let's begin. Hello and welcome, beautiful souls. So for this week's episode, I am thrilled to be speaking with Harmony Robinson-Stagg, who is an Ayurvedic practitioner, and she specializes in women's health, also has a lot with the divine feminine and goddesses, and even more. You're also, maybe Harmony, you could tell a little bit about you, because I know you're also a nurse and a doctor, I think a doctor as well, too. So can you just share a little bit about your very robust history?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a registered nurse and have been for 20 odd years now. I more so practice in the holistic health realm as an Ayurvedic practitioner, Ayurveda and women's health practitioner, and a doctor of Chinese medicine and acupuncture. So I really combine the three sciences together to get the best results for my clients and also for my students, because I run an Ayurveda school, which is the Ayurveda Alchemist Academy, where we certify women to become Ayurveda holistic health coaches.
How fantastic. Yeah, I love how you just have such a breadth of wisdom that you can pull from. That's definitely one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about today. Many of the women in my community, I would say, are 40 plus. Many are going through perimenopause and many are beyond it. But this topic comes up quite a bit. And there does seem to be a difference between Ayurveda's view and treatment of the symptoms and what we know in more of a Western allopathic culture. So I'm super excited, since you are so versed in both of these, to really start to get your opinion. One of the first questions I would like to ask is, how does Ayurveda view menopause? Because it wasn't in the original Ayurvedic text compared to what it is that we know now.
Yeah, absolutely. As opposed to allopathic medicine, Ayurveda is really good at not just looking at signs and symptoms saying this is a disease or this is what you have. Not that menopause is a disease. I want to put that out there. It is very, very natural occurrence of life, and every woman will go through it. So I think that the allopathic medical side can sometimes see it or as a syndrome or a disease when it really is not. And they know that too. It's the way that it's portrayed to the woman that's going through it. So Ayurveda doesn't discuss it as such, but it looks at the individual constitution and what the transition of the doshas and the doshic imbalance, the transition of what maybe your vikruti is, so your imbalanced state through that period of transition and time. And we know that there is physiological changes happening in our body because our hormones are shifting, our hormones are changing. And that, again, as we know, our internal environment will change our doshic imbalance from our natural constitution. So it really looks at balancing our individual constitution through this process. And we also look at, from an Ayurvedic perspective, we're moving from more of a pitta phase of life. So we're ovulating, hormonal, we're in that building asset stage of our life, that drive, and we're transitioning to a vata phase of life. Within our modern landscape, this is very difficult for some women to accept. And so we get exacerbated symptoms of those those like hot flushes because we have this trapped pitta in us. We're not allowing ourselves to release that pitta energy. We're still in the mode of go, 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 work, strive, achieve. And we're not transitioning into slowing down, allowing ourselves to be more nurtured. There's also this social stigma of not embarrassment, but feeling irrelevant. We're moving into who are we now? We're menopausal women. That sounds like, oh, that just means we're aging. And that's sort of frowned upon more so in our social settings in the modern world. But from an Ayurvedic perspective, it's actually stepping into your higher wisdom, your higher self. It's a really beautiful transition into the wisdom of womanhood and the ultimate beautiful goddess who can share their wisdom, slow down, and really step into who they've always known they are without all of those other things that come through the building phase, the pitta phase of life, holding them there if we allow that transition to happen naturally.
Oh, thank you so much. There's so much that I want to dive in there. So much beautiful wisdom. And I think there's just such a great opportunity, the more that we have discussions like this, to start to change the narrative on aging, right? Because we do live in a culture that is really obsessed with the maiden archetype, that just values youth at all cost. I think when we start to cling to that time or that period, we're really missing out on some beauty, some wisdom, and another phase of blossoming. So I definitely want to get back there. But one of the things that you were talking about is how we're moving from the pitta stage of life and to the vata. And I believe many of my listeners are familiar with the doshas, but if you are not, they are Ayurveda mind-body type. So they're really kind of like archetypes. And pitta really is representative of fire, and vata is air and ether. So we are moving from one life phase of something that might be more creative or something that is more spiritual. Do you believe that the reason that, especially in maybe our culture, we see so many symptoms, hormonal distress, is because we are still very much in the pitta phase as opposed to taking time to slow down and enter that next phase?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. And we know from like an Ayurvedic perspective, the mind body are intricately connected. You can't separate the two. So any impression on the body is going to leave a subtle impression on the mind. Any impression on the mind will leave an impression on the body. And so if your body's naturally trying to transition through this phase and you're mentally still really stuck in that pitta phase, it's going to create an imbalance in the body and vice versa. And talking about the doshas, what we naturally have an affinity to one of the doshas or two of the doshas, or maybe even all three of the doshas if you try dosha, but they can present slightly different in this menopausal transition or perimenopausal transition. So someone with a vata imbalance, their symptoms more so will manifest as that dryness. They will really notice the drop in estrogen, and that will cause that dryness of the joints, the vaginal lubrication, any sort of lubrication in the body becomes very dry and brittle. They will be more prone to anxiety, insomnia is a huge one, joint pain, and irregular menstrual cycles when they're in the perimenopause phase, like really irregular before they actually go into menopause. And I think we should also mention here is that perimenopause can last for many, many years. The true definition of menopause is when you haven't had a menstrual cycle for over 12 months, and then you don't have a menstrual cycle. So if you're fluctuating and having one every 3 months and then 6 months and then 2 months, you're still in that perimenopause phase. A pitta imbalance, which is really common in this transitional phase, is, as we know, hot flashes is such a common sign. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about that sort of trapped pitta energy, that trapped heat. There is also physiological responses in the body that is affecting the thermostat in the brain, which is also happening. And someone who's more prone to having pitta imbalances will feel these hot flushes a lot more. They might feel really irritable. They'll have more anger, maybe inflammation. A lot of digestive issues will sort of come up for the pitta women, and they can find it very hard to let go if they've been, and still are, because we don't retire till we're like, I don't know, in Australia, it's like 70 odd.
So same here, like 67, I think is when they say, but I think people tend to work as long as they can.
Yeah. So we can cling on to that as part of our identity too. And it's that actually transition that can be the most hardest for these women, because they've been identified with career women striving, and all of a sudden to let go of that is a real shift of identity. Then who am I without all that into this new phase, which is such an important emotional aspect to work on when we do this transition. People who are more prone to a kapha imbalance, they might result in a lot of weight gain, lethargy, energy, depression, and fluid retention. And we do know that our sex hormones have a direct impact on our stress hormones and our blood sugar hormones. So when these are imbalanced, we can find a lot of weight gain around the midsection. When we've got higher cortisol levels, those mood changes are making us feel stressed. The transition is stressful because we're like losing our sense of identity. There's so much that goes into it. And I think that's why Ayurveda is such a beautiful medicine, because it really looks at it holistically, our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and dharmic path when we're treating or helping managing the symptoms through this transition.
I love that perspective that our symptoms, they're more than just something physical, but they're also talking to us from a spiritual level as well. One of the things I like to tell my community and my clients is that your symptoms are not your body malfunctioning, but really kind of directing you to experience the world in a new way, maybe inviting you to approach life a little bit differently. What do you say to your clients who are like, I don't have time to slow down. I need to keep making money, or I still have young children, still need people that depend on me, that still have all of this pitta energy and is reluctant to start inviting maybe a bit more ease into their lives?
Yeah, there's a few approaches to that. There can be more of the harsh approach, which is like what you don't change, you're choosing. So if you stay like that and keep doing what you're doing, and you'll keep experiencing what you're experiencing. If you want that experience to change, you have to change some things. That's like the reality of it. And I totally understand. Life is busy. Women are having children later. They do have kids that they're running around after and all of that. We have to make time. We have to prioritize our time for what really matters. The woman in this situation really, really matters, because we do have a lot more life span in us these days. So this perimenopause to menopause transition sometimes is really sort of stretched out. We do have to be really mindful if we want that transition to happen as easily as possible. There are definitely changes that we have to make. So it might be in our daily routine, and it could just be like some very small tweaks that can make the biggest differences. Following more of a vata pacifying diet with warm, nourishing foods, including like cooked vegetables, grains, healthy fats. If you're someone that's experiencing a lot of the dryness, if you're someone who, like you said, is very pitta and like, I can't slow down, I've got to do all these things, it's like, where can you find a moment? Is that before your shower in the evening where you can practice self-abhyanga massage and really give some love back to the body? Because that does so much. Calms the central nervous system, helps to stimulate and move the lymphatic system, which can get very sort of clogged up in this period of life as well. It gives you a time to ground at the end of your day. And for my menopausal women, it has significantly helped with their hot flushes, which is absolutely amazing. And I don't know the actual science behind that, other than perhaps the regulating the central nervous system, which might help with the thermostat in the brain. But also, from my understanding, you apply pressure without knowing on a lot of the mama points or the acupressure points. And so that has been proven to be very beneficial to help with hot flushes. And if you don't do some of these small little changes, then if you're very pitta, you're going to burn out, and you're going to actually feel the suffering more so later, and you'll be able to do less later, and you'll be forced to slow down. So it's always better to catch yourself before you get to that stage. And that's what really Ayurveda is about, and just being able to prioritize some adequate rest and sleep practices, and making sure that, if I like to say to my clients who are very pitta and high functioning, high stress load, you don't always have to, obviously, if we all had the time and the patience, meditation morning and night, 20 minutes at least morning and night would be amazing. But reality, that's not the case for a lot of my clients who are pitta, running after kids, all those things. So I say, can we practice micro meditation? Can we practice just coming back into the body? And so even when you're at work, you can be sitting at your desk or wherever you are and know that you're starting to feel that heat build up. You can just sit there, close your eyes, come back into the body and just breathe and slow that central nervous system down. And one breath practice I really like for the pittas is Shitali breathing, which is naturally cooling. So you curl your tongue, or if you can't curl your tongue, make like a tube with your tongue, or like you're sucking through a straw. And then you just Inhale and exhale, and you're doing it through your mouth, and that's cooling the body internally. And that can just regulate your central nervous system, but also cool you down and help to manage those hot flushes that are going to come up.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I love those natural approaches. And I think Abhyanga is just a beautiful self-care practice just to come back to your body, for your nervous system. So it's so lovely to know that it can help with hot flashes as well, too. I wanted to bring up, it might be kind of a hot topic, but I feel like right now in the zeitgeist, like I'm seeing books everywhere on menopause. I mean, it could be also because I'm 49 and, this is just what is being presented to me. But I also hear on a lot of like the podcasts, like the functional medicine, there's so much talk about HRT. And I'm also hearing like, even if you have no symptoms, you should be on it. And I was wondering what your take is on it. And I know this is not one size fits all and everybody is different, but I guess at a very high level.
Yeah, 100% one size doesn't fit all. So we're on the mark there. And the way I look at it is from a functional medicine or a allopathic medicine point of view, what they're trying to do is like, we know through menopause, our estrogen and progesterone, they drop, right? Estrogen, it's not just a sex hormone, and progesterone is not just a hormone that after we ovulate helps us be fertile. What they do other things in the body. So they support our bone health. And that's why menopausal women are so much more prone to fractures and arthritis and bone conditions. They support our cardiovascular system. Progesterone supports our mood and our brain health. So we know that when these naturally drop is why we get some of the symptoms. Joint pain, for instance, maybe we get some flutters in the heart and brain fog, like a lot of women you may know experience. And so what they're saying is if you go on hormone replacement therapy, then we can give you different types, and a lot of them are synthetic hormones, but there are bioidentical plant-based hormone replacement therapies that helps to support the hormones which will support those functions in the body. Mm-hmm. So better bone health, cardiovascular health, all of those things, brain health. That's sort of where they're coming from. It really is dependent on the client. I personally wouldn't say that everyone needs to go on it, even if they don't have the symptoms. I don't feel that is what I would say. It's not my area of expertise, and I can't prescribe HRT or anything like that. So I'm just going from what I know and what I've seen in my client. However, some clients who are symptomatic and they've gone down all of the other pathways, then bioidentical hormones can be very beneficial for them, because we've got to think of quality of life as well. And so I think in the natural health world, we have such beautiful body awareness, and we have so many amazing tools and beautiful medicines that we can do to support. At the end of the day, if they have truly done all this and they're feeling they can't remember anything, they're so angry all the time at their spouse and their kids, they don't feel like themselves, purely because there has been a chemical change in their body from who they have been their whole sort of menstruating life, which is possibly from 13 years old to 55. And now there's a chemical change in the body that's changed their outlook, changed who they are and how they feel. Then supporting that, I don't think is a bad thing. I think that can play a role. So again, everyone is completely different. And I've seen women go on bioidentical hormones and they have been like, oh my God, my depression's gone. Like, I feel amazing. And I've had other women that have tried it and been like, it was not for me. You've got to help me just with Ayurveda, because that didn't serve me. And I will say it does take a lot of time to titrate the right dose for you with the bioidentical. So you have to work with a really good doctor. And I don't know what it's like in the States. I'm speaking from an Australian perspective, but a lot of the good ones here where I'm from in my area do work with the bioidentical hormones. So that's from my perspective of what I've seen personally with clients.
Hey, Goddess, are you feeling out of sync, low on energy, or just craving a deeper connection to your body? If so, I invite you to join me for the Feminine Flow, Restore Balance and Energy, a free 3-day training where you'll learn how to apply Ayurveda and feminine wisdom to nurture your body, align with your natural rhythms, and embrace holistic self-care. It's time to step into your radiance and vitality in a way that feels natural and effortless. We start soon. Save your spot with the link in the show notes. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I know that the women in my community, it goes both ways. And it really is such a personal decision. I think one of the things that comes up for me when I hear talk of HRT or women going on it is yes, and there still needs to be the lifestyle changes as well too. Not the quick fix, like it's going to solve the problems, but it's almost like a supplement to maybe all of the good work that you're doing with the lifestyle.
100%. And you can only exacerbate your connection to self and connection to spirit and all of that through this transitional time if you're doing the lifestyle, the diet. You can't expect one size fits all. So even if you go on HRT, it's not going to support all of the symptoms, everything, especially if you're going through an identity crisis. You have to do all things. And that's even for women who may be on any medication, even through their perimenopausal phase, their younger phase of life. You can't just rely on that. You've got to go deeper. You've got to change lifestyle, change diet, because that is helping grow you as the person, the goddess within. It's not just about taking even an Ayurvedic herbal supplement. That's not what it's about. It's about creating and cultivating greater self-awareness of self and being able to grow through this lifetime. And that doesn't come by taking any herbal supplement or medication. It comes by doing the inner work and the Ayurvedic rituals and the practices. That is what's really going to support us for longevity as well. That's where it helps our longevity.
Yeah. Oh, I love that perspective. And when we think of it that way, you kind of touched on this at the beginning. What is the invitation then for women as they are almost transforming their identity to in a sense? Do you have any thoughts on like how a woman can reframe that, or what is this invitation?
Yeah.
Next version.
100%. I speak to my clients a lot about this. I'm like, this can be such an exciting phase because you are transitioning into what I call the wise womanhood phase of life. And you are stepping into this more spiritual side of you and finding yourself again, like really finding who you are. If you do take the opportunity to slow down a little bit, to pivot, maybe you are dropping a shift at work or what that might look like. What is it that you really, really connect with and enjoy? Like, where's that? What about that creativity? Because creativity is also a connection to spirituality. Have you always thought about writing a book? I know you've written a book, like beautiful goddess book. And so maybe you've got a second book coming up. Maybe there's some wisdom inside me that I really need to get out on paper. Or maybe it's that I've always loved gardening, but I've never really had the time. And even if you're in a unit, you might just buy a few little plants and maybe they're beautiful herbs, like some tulsi or something like that. You can really nurture for those. Maybe it's finding some support groups or joining some groups with women of your age and going for ocean swims, or depending on where you live, maybe it's a hike, but really connecting back to that playful side of self and that self that feels connected to, because that could all be part of your dharma. Yeah. Dharma doesn't always have to be this higher purpose of this career. Like we've blown that out of proportion in our Western society. Our dharma is the right action in the right moment, in the right time for us. And this is our dharma, is to be able to slow down and really connect in this phase of life with who we truly want to be. And that identity can be such a beautiful shift if we allow it to be. And we can step into that inner goddess and that higher wisdom of self when we can connect to our creativity and our spiritual side and really allow that to flourish in these times. This isn't always the case, but hopefully, like for many of you may have already had the career, you've already built your assets, you've raised your kids. I know you've got teenage kids, so there's still a lot of raising and running around to do, but they are coming of age. And so there is that part where you can let go a little bit and move into your phase of life as well.
Yeah, it can be really an exciting time. Carl Jung has this beautiful quote where he says, life really does begin at 40. Up until then, you're just doing research. And I love to think about it as like the first half of life, you're trying to figure out how to survive. You're building your family or your career. And it's like a very much outward focused energy. And then the second half of life is you get to rediscover you and what it is that you enjoy and turns you on and lights you up.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm 40, in my 40s, and I've never felt more sure of who I am and more confident, and I'm in a really, really good place. And I think exactly, I love that quote, you are figuring everything out, and it does take that long. It does. That long. And sometimes we're still figuring it out, let's be honest, but from a more confident place and also from a more accepting place if you allow yourself to step into that. And I think that beautiful, the Sanskrit word of santosha, it's like that contentment. It really we can start to embody that santosha in our life.
Yeah. Oh, I love that word. One word that I do not really love is happy. And of course, I want all of you to be very happy, but it just sounds so transient when you see the happiness hacks and this and that. Santosha, though, is just this inner contentment. I will be okay. I am good. And I think that's really what we're striving for.
Yeah, absolutely. Happiness is great and joyfulness is great. But in reality, if we can strive for that contentment, santosha, that's the reality of what life really can show us, and have those beautiful, happy moments within that santosha. But even when things aren't going amazing, because this is just life and we're humans, we can still have that acceptance and channel into that feeling of santosha, of contentment. I can get through this, been through this, and you just do it with that wise womanhood hat on, easier.
Yeah, I love that you're saying the wise woman, because I always love to bring in archetypes into the discussion. There's the maiden, mother, crone, but sometimes, especially where we're healthier and we're doing things longer, it seems like a big switch from the mother then to the crone. Then there's archetypes in between, like the wise woman. And I've been working with the enchantress, which I think is a good archetype that starts to bridge the mother and the crone. Are there any other archetypes that come to mind for this phase of life, just to help them, give them a new perspective as we want to hold on to the maiden sometimes, or even the mother, but there's so much more to explore.
Yeah, I actually feel that this phase, stepping back into your creative and play side as well, alongside that sort of wise womanhood. I feel when I picture it in my head, it's just this beautiful goddess being able to step out really confident, having all this a little bit like Saraswati, having this beautiful wisdom, but being really content in herself, not having to prove herself, but then also this ability to have that playful side again and that creativity. Saraswati is very creative. That's who comes to mind for me personally. I don't know from your perspective. I know goddesses are your thing and you've done so much work on that. So is there another one that sort of aligns to what I'm saying?
Yes, most definitely. There's Ceridwen, and she is a Welsh goddess of divination, inspiration, and magic. And the interesting thing about Ceridwen is she is a mother, but her kids are older. So it's no longer the day-to-day driving around. Not that they were driving around in 2,000 years ago and dealing with activities, but she's older. She has this cauldron of inspiration. She's always creating, transforming. She's a shapeshifter. And I think that can be a really powerful one to work. Who am I becoming next? What am I creating? What am I bringing to life? Just because we're no longer creating babies, and it's okay if that was never your path. But I think as women, we're just inherently creative. There's always almost something bursting forth, whether it's the garden, planting the herbs, or creating a really nice experience for dinner. But there's always something that we're creating.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. And I can really feel that energy through that transitional shift. What are we creating? Who are we today? We can step into our many facets of what we've built up over all of these years of who we are, because we're not just this one singular sort of like robot being. We have so many facets of self, and being able to explore those again is just magical.
Yeah, it really is. Thank you so much. It was just such a pleasure having you here today. Is there anything else you would like to share? Anything for women who are currently struggling, going through things, maybe both physically and spiritually? Any words of wisdom that you would like to provide before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think when we can start to understand ourselves, and when we do that through Ayurveda, because it's really about cultivating more self-awareness, we can transition through this a lot easier. And that is working, as we've mentioned, on that shift of identity piece and allowing that to flow and being a pathway and a passageway into our rights, into this wise womanhood, and not being caught up in society's narrative that this is aging. It's not aging. It is actually blooming. It's just this new phase of an exciting phase of life. And it's a very respected phase if we allow that to be. So really working on yourself, doing the rituals, really tapping into who you are is going to help you in this transition in the most profound way. And I think when we look at things like Ayurvedic psychology, we look at the different layers of the mind. If we can allow ourselves to constantly be operating from ahankara and more stepping into that buddhi, that higher intellect of the mind, we're being able to move through, hopefully in like the 30s, 40s, if we've done the work, we've moved through the samskaras, those imprints that are left on the chitta, the subconscious mind, that have sort sort of created those limiting core beliefs and held us to the belief of who we are in that lifetime. And we're moving through those, we're breaking through those samskaras and we're transitioning through to this other side. So there's more clarity of mind. And so I think that if we can really work on those aspects of self, so we're releasing a lot of the armor, the physical, the mental, emotional armor that's been built up over time, then we can step into this phase, not with the brain frog, but actually with the clarity of mind, where that goddess wisdom, that Saraswati wisdom really gets to shine.
Oh, I love that. Do you have a favorite ritual that you would like to share just in your own practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have morning and evening rituals, and my morning ritual is always I get up, and I'm an early riser. Like this is 6 a.m. as we were recording, but that's fine for me because I love to watch the sunrise. I live on the Gold Coast in Australia, and I get up and make a beautiful tea and I watch the sunrise. And then I come back into self and I do some breath. Mm-hmm. So always connect to breath, connect to body, connect to self, and ask like, how am I feeling today? And then I will always have to move my body. I'm a Vata Pitta constitution, so I do some sort of movement, and I just absolutely love that for me. And whether that's walking, Pilates, yoga, I just feel so energized from that. And again, it's another way of connecting to my body and connecting to my breath. And in the evening, I actually love to do my Abhyanga. If I can, if I've got the time, I will do it morning and night. But I have actually really been enjoying my Abhyanga lately. There's something about the last probably 3 months, I have done it so consistently and have just felt the benefits, have felt everything in me just slow down, feel nurtured. Like we do it with oil, which is the word oleation is sneha, right? And also sneha also means love. And so we're giving ourselves love and self-compassion. And to be honest, like I haven't done it as consistently as I have now. And I have absolutely noticed the difference on that emotional, spiritual and connection level. And when I'm doing the Abhyanga, I might put on some different chants or music depending on the energy I want to bring in. And if it is in the morning and I'm about to teach in my Ayurveda school, it will be the energy of Saraswati. So some of those chants, maybe it's Lakshmi, it's like more about that abundance feeling. Yeah, depending on what energy I want to bring in, because I feel like I'm literally absorbing and soaking it into my body when I'm listening to those beautiful sounds and massaging into my body.
Oh, I love that. That's so beautiful. Abhyanga, self-massage with oil. It has so many physical benefits, but you really touched on so many psycho-spiritual benefits as well, where it just feels good. And I love the idea of really thinking of the intention, or what do you want to embody? Is it the Saraswati energy or Lakshmi energy? That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Harmony, for joining and all of your beautiful wisdom that I know is going to be so helpful and appreciated from many of the women in my community. I will put all of your information in the show notes, so Instagram, website, anything else, or anything that you want to just share, or how people can find you or work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you did want to reach out, I'm quite active on Instagram at Harmony Inspired Ayurveda, so you can drop into my DMs there. I do have the Ayurveda school running, so if you are interested in becoming an Ayurveda and women's health coach, then you can find that on my website, harmonyinspiredhealth.com.au. And if you do want to work with me one-to-one, you can also find all the links there. And I also have a podcast, Harmony Inspired Health. So Lisa's actually been on my podcast a while ago as well, speaking about all the goddesses. So
yeah, great. And I will have all of those links in the show notes. So thank you so much. And it was lovely seeing you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really love sharing this information. And I do have a blog on my website. So I will send you a blog about the menopause, perimenopause to menopause transition, just if your listeners want to sort of read through and learn a little bit more about that hormonal shift and some Ayurvedic herbs that can help and that kind of stuff.
Fantastic. All right. That will be there as well too. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Goddess School podcast. I hope today's episode inspired you to reclaim your feminine magic. Now, don't forget to subscribe to the show. And if you've enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a review on Apple. If you want to dive deeper into divine feminine archetypes and reconnect with your power, check out my book, The Goddess Solution. It's packed with ancient goddess wisdom for the modern woman. You can find the book on Amazon, and the link is in the show notes. And if you are ready to embrace these practices alongside a global sisterhood, I invite you to join my Divine Feminine Mystery School, Enlivened. It's a supportive space to embody these teachings with a fantastic community of like-minded women. You'll find the link in the show notes. Remember, the goddess isn't a deity outside of you. She's an aspect of your highest self. You are the goddess. Until next time, my friend.